Hey, 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 kom eens. Kom maar. Kom maar even door. Doe maar. Hi, I'm MJ and welcome to a new video. In this video I'm going to be copying a dress that I bought ages ago but hardly ever wore because it had some, shall we say, issues. I still like the model and fit, that was never the problem, and for a time I thought that I could just fix whatever was wrong with it. I even made an attempt to fix one of the issues. Sadly that did not work out and also meant that I could no longer even fix the other issue. So this is the dress in question. It's pretty cute. So the issues with this dress. For one, it had a polyester lining, even though it was supposed to be a summer dress. The cotton outer layer is very fine and light and comfortable, but the lining gets super sticky and uncomfortable whenever it's just the slightest bit hot, which is all the time in summer when you want to wear this dress. Issue number 2. At some point I had left it out in the sun too long after washing. This resulted in a faded area from about the waist up. You can see it in this picture. This is the issue that I tried to fix by dyeing it black again, but you could still see the difference in color. So that didn't work. So with that unsolvable, replacing the lining with a more comfortable fabric became kind of a moot point. So it's kind of lucky that I didn't try to do that first, in hindsight. After dyeing didn't work, this dress lived in my UFO pile, shoved away in a drawer for years. I don't even know how long. Even then I had the idea that I might be able to copy it. But it wasn't until a few months ago that I decided to finally face this project, because I wanted to be able to wear it again, just not as it, you know, was. Procrastination. That was silly. So, this video is a chronicle of the process of copying this dress. I found some fabrics online, a beautiful green cotton jacquard and a matching viscose. Maybe the word in English is rayon, I'm not sure. It is man-made, but it's plant-based, so infinitely more comfortable than polyester. I ordered slightly too much of both of these to be on the safe side, and if I had anything left, I might be able to make something else out of the remains. To take the pattern off of this dress, I basically just cut it up. I separated the shell and the lining, I cut down the center front and removed the zipper in the back. I cut off the seam allowances of 1/2 of the dress. I also cut off the bust dart in the front panel. This gave me 4 pattern pieces, a front cut on the fold, a side front, a side back and a back to first make a mock-up with. I did this partly because I wanted to double check the fit and also to remove the odd gathered sections in the skirt and the little ties at the front neckline, which were never my favorite part. It fit exactly the same as the original dress and I was happy with the new shape of the skirt. So again, I cut off the seam allowances and the dart so I could use the mock-up to make a permanent pattern in case I ever want to make another dress like this again. For this I didn't use pattern paper, which I never find as translucent as I hope it will be. Instead I used plastic trash bags. Bear with me here. These are semi-industrial, very sturdy and super see-through. They don't tear, so you can punch holes in them to indicate darts or pleats. You can fold them to shorten a piece without it gradually wearing down. They store easily and they can be ironed on a low setting. I know it's plastic, but they can also be repurposed easily. Have a pattern that didn't quite work out, or you know, after making it once you know that you won't use it again, just tape a bunch of pieces together and you have a new sheet to make patterns with. And then there's my favorite thing about this stuff. Scissors just slide on through and it's so satisfying. No cutting motion required, just get the first bit going and then just whoosh, straight to the end. With the pattern sorted, I could start cutting into my fabric. It took a bit of fiddling, but I managed to find a good way to place all of the pattern pieces and have about half a yard left. Incidentally, all of this was done during a heat wave, and playing pattern Tetris, pinning, cutting all of these pieces twice, once for shell and once for lining, was a hot and sweaty mess, even if we caved and bought 2 standing fans halfway through. 1 out of 10, do not recommend. I sewed together the shell first and installed an invisible zipper. The original dress had a cotton facing to which the lining was attached, but I decided to just make the same pattern twice and attach the lining and shell along the neckline, armholes and zipper. For now, I just basted the side seams so I could try it on and see if it needed any adjustments after all. It still fit pretty nice, which no surprise since the mock-up fit already, but it never hurts to double check. After, I undid the basted side seams so that the front and back were only connected at the shoulders to make it easier to attach the lining later. I decided against bag lining it, so that meant that each layer would have to be hemmed separately and the seams of each layer would not quite be contained. To keep everything neat, I decided I would hand fell the side front and back seams and do French seams on the sides. This meant a lot of hand sewing, but honestly I do not mind hand sewing at all. I love the look of a hand-felled seam and I find it relaxing to do. Sometimes if I want to sew but not be bothered with major steps or complexity or planning, I decide to do a hand-felled seam on a project that doesn't strictly require it, just because I enjoy it. It was quite a lot of hand sewing, so let's speed through that a bit. Dus well, that took a few days. Anyway, I pinned the lining and the shell along the neckline, right sides together. After I sewed the neckline, I clipped the edges, which were nothing but curve, and turned the lining to the inside. I gave it a good press and top stitched the entire neckline. You can see the little loop shape at the top of the back piece. I did spend some time investigating how this was done in the original dress while I took it apart, because I was worried about how to turn inside out a dress with both a neck hole and a keyhole in the back. But luckily it was cut as 2 separate pieces, turned inside out and just top stitched. So that's what I did as well. Then I focused on finishing the center back. The shell already had the zipper, but the lining was still loose. First, I sewed the lining center back up to where the zipper would start and basted the rest of the way. Then I felt down the seam allowance on either side of that seam and removed the basting. I pinned the lining wrong sides together to the zipper tape in the shell and hand sewed it down. This way the lining doesn't get in the way of the zipper, but it's free to move independently from the shell from the end of the zipper down. Next up were the side seams. As I mentioned, I used French seams with pockets included in the shell. To do this, I first attached each pocket half to its corresponding dress half with a French seam. Then I pressed those out nice and crisp, put the two shell layers wrong sides together, sewed all the way up and around the outside of the pocket, turned it inside out and pressed and sewed it again, this time right sides together. I then did the same minus the pockets for the lining. Since the armholes were still raw, I had to tackle those next. I had stay stitched the edges after I cut out the fabric, so now I clipped the seam allowance because curves and used the stay stitching as a guide to turn it inwards. It took a lot of pins and some fiddling, but I got the lining and the shell attached with pins on both sides and then whip stitched them down by hand. To finish the armholes, I top stitched close to the edge to match the neckline top stitching that I did earlier. By now it was 90% a real dress. I hung it up for a few days to allow the hem to warp on the bias, then evened it out and cut off the excess. Now, normally I'm a fan of using bias tape for curved hems. Either self fabric or a contrasting fabric. You know, having a little bit of contrasting color peek out when the skirt moves is fun. But in this case I wanted to use the fabric that I had left for a different project, rather than creating bias tape with it. So I just decided to do the fold twice and stitch down method. Both of these fabrics are quite loosely woven, so I was able to manipulate the curved edge upwards twice without too much pulling or puckering. The hem was sewed down by hand on both layers with a catch stitch. A final press to settle everything down, and the dress was done. All in all, this dress came together great. Taking the pattern was relatively easy. It helps that the original dress still fit nicely, and during construction nothing really went wrong or different from how I planned it, which is quite rare, actually, now that I think about it. For future dresses that use this pattern, I might add a bit of width to the skirt portion, because whenever I put my hands in the pockets, it feels a little bit tight along my hips in the back. So I think it could use a little bit more volume there. But for now it works. I might also skip the keyhole back for future dresses to make them work in more different temperatures. But I'm definitely looking forward to making more dresses with this pattern. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are inspired to copy/clone a dress yourself, let me know how it turns out. Thanks for the original dress for its service and sacrifice, to my cat Nikki for being a great sewing buddy, and to my new standing fan to make the heatwave that much more bearable. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Too much yay, don't yay so much. This is the dress in... which way? This way. Infinitely more comfortable. Infinitely more comfortable. Am I being too weird? Who knows?